Grace once lived a happy life with her loving parents. But after a tragic accident stole their lives and her sight, she was left in the cruel hands of relatives who treated her like a burden. Yet Grace never gave up. In the silence of darkness, she dreamed. Until one day, she was sold. Not for punishment, but for marriage to a billionaire's son. What he didn't expect was the girl he bought might be the one to save him. Before we dive into today's gripping story, we want to take a moment to appreciate you, our amazing subscribers, new viewers, and the incredible community that makes Moonlight Tales by Samzy so special. Your likes, shares, and thoughtful comments mean the world to us, and we're beyond grateful for your support. If this is your first time here, welcome. You're in for a ride filled with drama, suspense, and unexpected twists. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest stories. And of course, drop a comment below. We love hearing from you, and your support keeps us going. Now, sit back, relax, and let's dive right back into the story, because things are about to get even more intense. Grace had a beautiful life. Her home was always filled with laughter, hugs, and the sound of her mother's humming while sketching buildings on large white paper. Her father, tall and strong, smelled of cement and sunshine. He worked at a construction site, building homes for people. Her mother was an architect, drawing the plans for buildings that reached up to the sky. Every morning, Grace would wake up to the gentle clinking of dishes, the smell of fried eggs, and the soft kisses her parents placed on her forehead before work. On weekends, her father took her to the park and lifted her high in the air. Her mother would sit on the bench, laughing, her sketchbook always beside her. Grace was 7, full of dreams and questions. She wanted to be like both of them, build like her daddy, design like her mommy. One sunny afternoon, her mom packed a small lunch in a basket. "Let's go surprise your dad," she said with a smile. Grace's eyes sparkled. She loved going to the site. She loved wearing the tiny yellow helmet her dad had gotten just for her. They arrived at the construction site and waved at the workers. Her dad smiled when he saw them. "My girls," he said, running over to carry Grace in his arms. He kissed her mom, and they all sat in a shaded corner to eat. That was the last happy moment Grace could remember. The sound came first. A long, angry groan from above. Screams. Crashes. Dust. Heavy dust. And then a silence so loud it hurt. A part of the building under construction had collapsed. Everything happened so fast. When Grace woke up, it was dark. But not because it was nighttime. Her eyes were wide open, but she couldn't see anything. Panic hit her. Mommy? Daddy? She couldn't feel their arms. Only cold sheets. Only strange voices. The doctors explained gently. There had been an accident. A beam had fallen. Her parents didn't survive. Grace had. But she would never see again. She didn't understand at first. She screamed. She cried. She called for her mom. For her dad. She thought maybe they were playing hide and seek. But no one came. Grace stayed in the hospital for a long time. People came and went. Some brought flowers. Some spoke in hushed voices. But no one stayed. Not like her parents used to. Then one day, a man sat beside her bed. He smelled like her dad, only older. His name was Isaac. He said he was her uncle, her dad's younger brother. "I'm taking you home, Grace," he said gently. "I promise to look after you." Grace didn't answer. She just nodded. When they got to his house, it didn't feel like home. It was smaller. Colder. And there was a woman there who didn't smile at all. Her name was Samantha, and from the very first day, she didn't want Grace around. She didn't say it nicely, but she said it a lot. "Why did we have to take her in?" she would whisper loudly to Isaac. "You're not the only brother he had, are you? Can't we send her to an orphanage or something?" But Isaac refused. Grace tried to be quiet. She didn't want to cause any trouble. She missed her parents. She missed light. She missed colors. Now, her world was made of shadows and silence. She didn't know then that this was only the beginning of her new life, a life filled with challenges she never imagined. A life where love would come in strange, unexpected ways. But even then, with her heart broken and her world turned dark, Grace held on to one small thing her mother once told her. "Even when you can't see the sun, baby girl, it's still shining." And Grace believed it. Somehow, somewhere, the light was still there. After the accident that took her parents and her sight, Grace was taken to live with her father's only brother, Uncle Isaac. Isaac lived in a small, two-bedroom house at the edge of town with his wife, Samantha, and their son, Jordan. From the very first day, Grace could feel that Samantha didn't want her there. "Is your brother sure he had no other siblings?" Samantha would whisper loudly, thinking Grace couldn't hear. "I'm not running a charity house, Isaac," she snapped one day. "We can barely feed ourselves." But Isaac stood firm. "She's my niece. She has no one else." Even though Isaac did his best, life in that house wasn't easy for Grace. Samantha made her do chores every day, sweeping, washing, cooking, without caring that Grace couldn't see. Blind or not, she'd say, "You'll earn your place here." Grace never complained. She didn't know how to. She just nodded, listened, and tried her best. She used her hands to feel the walls, the broom, the pots. Slowly, she learned to do the chores by memory. But Jordan, their 12-year-old son, didn't make it easier. In fact, he made it worse. He liked to play tricks on her. He once replaced her bathing soap with a piece of yam cut to look the same and rubbed with pepper. Grace used it and ended up itching for hours. Jordan laughed until he cried. He put pebbles inside her shoes. Switched sugar with salt when she was baking a small cake for Uncle Isaac's birthday. She had worked so hard on that cake. Her small hands had trembled as she offered him the first slice. Isaac smiled and ate it, but Jordan laughed so hard, shouting, "It tastes like the ocean." Grace's cheeks burned with shame. That night, she cried quietly into her pillow, careful not to make a sound. When Jordan had friends over, they'd put objects in her way just to make her fall. And when she did, their laughter filled the house like a sharp wind. But still, Grace was not broken. In the quietest corners of the house, where Samantha rarely looked, Grace built a secret world. It had started with memories. Her mom used to show her how to design tiny houses out of cardboard and glue. They'd sit on the floor, making little windows and roofs. Her mom would say, "You don't just see with your eyes, Grace. You feel with your heart." After the accident, Grace remembered those words. She asked Uncle Isaac one evening, "Do you have any old boxes or glue?" He found her a few things, and every night after her chores, Grace sat by the corner of the study, feeling, cutting, shaping. Though she couldn't see, her hands learned to feel sizes, spaces, textures. She remembered how a house should feel. She made little homes, then trees, then parks. Each one took her days. But every time she finished, she smiled. They weren't just models. They were her dreams. Sometimes, Uncle Isaac would see her work and say, "This is beautiful, Grace." He once took a tiny model of a bridge to a local architect he knew. The man looked at it for a long time and said, "Whoever did this has a gift." He didn't know the gift belonged to a blind girl. But Samantha didn't care. She called them trash and childish dreams. "You're making a mess," she'd yell, throwing Grace's model into the trash. Once, she stepped on one on purpose, smashing it to pieces. Grace said nothing. She just picked up the pieces and kept them in a small box under her bed. Even when her models were destroyed, Grace didn't stop. That little corner was her world. It was the one place Samantha couldn't reach, where Jordan couldn't hurt her, where the voices of laughter and anger faded. In that small space, her mother's voice lived on. In the silence, she could hear it. "Feel with your heart, Grace." And so, in a house full of cruelty, Grace built a place of peace. Not with bricks or money, but with cardboard, memory, and love. She couldn't see the light, but she carried it inside her. And it made her stronger than anyone knew. Isaac had never felt this much weight in his chest before. Every night, he sat alone at the edge of his small bed, holding an old picture of his brother, Grace's father. They were both young in the photo, arms over each other's shoulders, smiling with dreams in their eyes. Isaac had promised his brother something long ago. "If anything ever happens to me, take care of Grace." He had meant it. With his whole heart. But now things had changed. His construction job was gone. The company shut down. They owed rent. They owed people money. There was barely enough food to go around. Samantha reminded him of that every single day. "You can't keep pretending that girl is our child," Samantha snapped one evening. Her voice was sharp, cold. "You're trying to be a hero, but heroes don't feed families. Money does." Isaac sat at the dinner table, his hands wrapped around a chipped mug of tea that had gone cold hours ago. He didn't say a word. "She's blind, Isaac," Samantha continued. "She'll never have a future. She'll always depend on us." "What kind of life is that?" "She's still a child," he whispered. "No, she's a problem. And I'm tired of living like this because of someone else's mistake." Isaac flinched. That word, mistake. Grace was not a mistake. She was innocent. Sweet. Gentle. She never complained. Even when Samantha shouted. Even when Jordan played his wicked games. She never raised her voice. She just quietly wiped her tears and kept moving forward. But Isaac had seen the tears. He had seen her trying to glue broken pieces of her little cardboard house back together after Samantha destroyed it. He had seen her sleep on the floor when her room was taken over by guests. He had seen her bend over backward to earn love that should have been freely given. Still, Samantha kept pushing. "This family is offering millions, Isaac. Do you know what that kind of money can do? We'll be free of all our problems. Jordan can go to a better school. We can move. Start over." "Start over?" Isaac asked. "And what about Grace? What kind of life are we sending her into?" "She's going to be a wife to a rich man. A blind wife, yes, but rich. She'll have things we could never give her." Isaac looked away. The silence between them felt thick, heavy, like a rope slowly tightening around his chest. He didn't know what to say. What to think. That night, as the moonlight slipped through the living room window, Grace stood quietly in the hallway. She had come to get a glass of water, but when she heard her name whispered in that low, heavy voice, Isaac's voice, she froze. Her uncle was sitting on the old couch, head in his hands. Samantha stood nearby, arms crossed. "I just don't know if I can live with myself if I do this," Isaac said. "You already live with guilt, Isaac," Samantha said. "At least this guilt comes with a solution. I'm not asking you to harm her. I'm asking you to save us." "I already told the family no once," he sighed. "They didn't like it." "Then change your answer. Call them back. Tell them yes. Please, Isaac. We need this." Grace's hands trembled as they rested against the wall. She couldn't see their faces, but she could hear everything. And every word stabbed her heart. They were selling her. Not because they believed it would bring her happiness, but because they wanted to be free of her. She backed away slowly, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. The glass she had come for no longer mattered. The thirst in her throat was nothing compared to the ache in her chest. In the dark, she found her way back to her small mattress in the study and pulled the covers over her. She didn't cry loud. She didn't speak. She just lay there, still, her heart learning something it had never truly understood before. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who let go of you the fastest. And in that silence, Grace felt something inside her begin to break. Not her spirit, but her hope. Grace sat on the old wooden stool near the window, her hands resting quietly on her lap. The sun filtered through the curtains, warming her skin, but her heart felt cold. It had been 3 days since she overheard her Uncle Isaac telling Samantha that he had accepted the billionaire family's offer. Her world, already filled with shadows, felt even darker now. She had cried quietly that night. Not because she was afraid of being married, but because it felt like her uncle had finally given up on her. He had been her only safe place. And now, he had let her go. The next morning, the house felt different. There was a silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy one that comes before something big happens. Grace sat on her mat, folding her hands tightly together, when she heard a knock at the door. "Delivery for Grace," a voice called. Samantha rushed to the door before anyone else could. Grace heard the rustling of packages, the tearing of boxes. Then, silence again. Later that afternoon, Isaac came into the room with a soft sigh. He helped her to sit on the edge of the bed, then placed a box on her lap. She touched the soft material inside. It was a dress, silky and smooth, unlike anything she had ever worn. Isaac didn't speak much, but Grace could tell he was holding back tears. "The dress is for your wedding," he said quietly. More gifts followed over the next few days, boxes filled with perfume, roses, chocolates, shiny shoes with soft soles, and sparkling jewelry that Samantha tried to hide for herself. But this time, Isaac stopped her. "Leave them," he said sternly. "They're not yours." It was the first time Grace had heard him raise his voice to Samantha. The morning of the wedding came with the sound of a car horn, long and deep. A man's voice called out, "We're here to take the bride." Samantha didn't even help Grace get dressed. She just dropped the dress on her bed and left the room. But Isaac helped her again. He brushed her hair carefully, buttoned up the dress with trembling fingers, and helped her wear the shoes. When he placed the necklace around her neck, he whispered, "You're beautiful, Grace." "I hope he sees that." Grace didn't speak. Her throat felt tight. But she reached out and gently touched Isaac's face, memorizing the lines she could feel beneath her fingers. She didn't need to see him to know he was crying. The car that took her was nothing like anything she had ever ridden in. The seats were soft, the air inside smelled like flowers and something expensive she couldn't name. A soft voice greeted her, "Miss Grace, we're honored to take you today." She nodded quietly, her fingers tightening around the seatbelt. The drive was long, and the car finally stopped near the ocean. Grace could smell the salt in the air and hear the gentle crash of waves. Someone helped her out of the car and guided her across soft sand. Then she felt something cold and hard beneath her feet. Tiles, maybe? A platform? There were whispers around her. People speaking gently, someone adjusting her veil, another brushing her dress. Then silence. And then a deep voice beside her said, "Are you ready?" It was Vincent. She knew from the softness in his tone and the careful way he held her arm. Not tight. Not rushed. Just present. The ceremony was small. The waves sang in the background, and the wind danced with the veil around her face. Grace didn't know who the guests were, but their silence said everything: rich, powerful, curious people watching a blind girl marry a billionaire's son. When it was time to say her vows, her voice trembled. But she spoke clearly. "I may not see you, Vincent, but I hope to know you. Truly. In time." He didn't say much in return, but when he gently placed the ring on her finger, his hand didn't shake. After the soft applause, Grace was led away, not by a stranger, but by Vincent himself. He guided her into the car again. This time, she could feel his eyes on her, like he was trying to understand who she really was. The ride was quiet. But something had begun to shift. Not in the world, but inside their hearts. The car rolled to a stop. Grace sat still, her fingers gently clutching the edge of her dress. The soft hum of the engine had been her only company during the long ride. Now, silence. Except for the sound of the waves crashing gently somewhere close by. She didn't need eyes to know this place was nothing like the house she had left behind. The air smelled different, cleaner, salter, like the sea. She could feel space around her. Wide, open space. The door opened, and a hand reached out to her. Vincent. He didn't say a word, just gently took her hand and helped her out of the car. His touch was unsure, like he wasn't used to helping anyone, but he was careful not to pull or rush her. Grace stepped down slowly. The ground beneath her feet was smooth marble, maybe. Expensive. Cold. Vincent guided her forward. She could feel his presence next to her, tall, quiet, and distant. He didn't speak. She didn't either. The silence between them was heavy. Inside, the air changed. Cool and perfumed. The sound of her soft shoes echoed off the high ceiling. She imagined grand walls, chandeliers, polished floors. This was not just a house, it was a mansion. He led her through the quiet hallways and into a room. It smelled of fresh paint and lavender. "This is your room," Vincent said quietly, his voice low, unfamiliar, and unreadable. Grace nodded. "Thank you." He hesitated, standing there for a moment. Then, without another word, he turned and left, closing the door gently behind him. Grace stood still for a while. She let her fingers trail along the edge of a table, the back of a chair. The room was big. Bigger than the living room back at Uncle Isaac's house. She walked slowly toward what she guessed was a window. She could feel a soft breeze coming through the curtains. She sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. Everything was different now. Too different. No Samantha yelling, no Jordan playing tricks, no Uncle Isaac whispering words of comfort in the kitchen. Now it was just her. And a husband she didn't know. Night came. The sky outside had turned dark, but Grace couldn't tell. The room was quiet, too quiet. She couldn't sleep. Her thoughts swirled inside her like a storm. She stood and walked to the window. The air smelled even more of the sea now. She opened the curtain a little and stood there, listening to the waves, the wind, the far-off call of a bird. She was so lost in the stillness, she didn't hear him come in. Vincent stood by the door, watching her. He hadn't expected her to be awake. She looked so small standing there by the window, her hands lightly touching the curtain, her head tilted slightly, as if listening for something only she could hear. He didn't know what to say. So he said nothing. But Grace spoke. "You don't have to pretend, Vincent," she said softly. "I know I wasn't brought here for love." Vincent was silent. Her words were calm, not angry, not sad. Just true. Finally, he said, "You're not what I expected." Grace turned her head slightly toward his voice. "Neither are you." He took a slow step forward. She didn't move away. "You don't act afraid," he said. "I've lived through worse," she replied. "Fear is not the worst thing I've felt." He studied her face, the way she spoke with her heart instead of her eyes. The way she stood there with quiet grace, not begging, not complaining, just being. She wasn't just a blind girl. She was something else. Something strong. And for the first time in a long while, Vincent didn't feel like breaking something. Or yelling. Or running. He just stood there. Watching her. Not with pity. But with something else. Something gentle. Something new. Vincent couldn't sleep. The waves crashed softly beyond the cliffs, their rhythm far too calm for the storm inside his chest. He lay on the couch in the sitting room, staring at the ceiling, the echo of Grace's voice still floating in his mind. "You don't have to pretend, Vincent. I know I wasn't brought here for love." She had said it so calmly, like it didn't break her heart. Like she had already accepted it, swallowed it, and tucked it away somewhere he couldn't reach. That was the first thing that had struck him, her calm. Not fear. Not pleading. Not even hate. Just calm. Like she'd walked through worse things in silence and had learned how to live with pain like it was air. Vincent had expected her to cry. To beg. To tremble. But she didn't do any of those things. Instead, she stood at the window, blind eyes toward the sea, like she could see beyond the world itself. He had watched her quietly, hoping she wouldn't hear the way his breath caught in his throat. Something about her presence made the giant mansion feel different. Warmer. Still, he didn't know what to say. He never did when it came to feelings. He was raised on money, commands, and consequences, not softness. Grace was soft. But not weak. That was the second thing that struck him. She wasn't weak. She moved around slowly, carefully, but with dignity. Her hands searched the edges of the space around her, not like a girl lost, but like a girl discovering. Like every wall she touched told her a story. Like the world still belonged to her, even if she couldn't see it. Earlier, after the wedding, he'd helped her up the stairs. She didn't complain once. She only whispered thank you each time he offered a hand. And when he showed her the room, she had smiled. A soft, real smile. No one had smiled at him like that in a long time. Not the maids. Not the women who chased his money. Not even his own parents. They only ever looked at him with fear. Or frustration. Or pity. But Grace. Grace had smiled like he was just a man. A person. Not a project. And it scared him. Because deep down, he knew he wasn't ready for whatever this girl carried inside her. He sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and looked toward the hallway. Her door was closed. The hallway lights dim. Still, he could feel her presence in the house. Like her peace was something the mansion had never known before. He remembered how she stood in the moonlight earlier, her dress swaying lightly in the breeze from the open window. Her voice so gentle, yet firm. "Honest, neither are you," she had said when he admitted she wasn't what he expected. She saw him. Really saw him. And she couldn't even see. That did something to him. For the first time, he wondered what she had gone through. What it must have felt like to lose everything. To hear the walls of her life collapse and wake up in a world of darkness. To be treated like a burden, a tool, a deal. And yet, she had stood at that altar with Grace. Quiet. Still. Beautiful. Vincent had met many women. Loud, proud, bold. Women who wore their power like perfume. But Grace. Grace wore silence like armor. She didn't need to shout to be heard. She didn't need to see to be seen. Vincent leaned back into the couch and closed his eyes. For once, he didn't feel angry. He didn't feel broken. He just felt still. And he wondered if that was what Grace had come to do. Not fix him. Not save him. But teach him how to feel again. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. He didn't know if he was ready to be a husband, or if he even deserved to be one. But he knew this. That girl, blind, broken, and sold like an object, was not a victim. She was light. And somehow, even in his darkness, that light was beginning to shine. Not from the outside, but from within.